Hello, everybody. My name is Angela, middle initial K, last name Durden, and this is The Constrained View. Today's topic that I've been giving a lot of thought to this topic for quite some time, and it's about teaching and learning. You know, I will have to say that I had some really good teachers growing up, but I had some bad ones too. But there were more good ones than bad ones. And I think that was most people's experience. And when I see a lot of teachers now, and teachers, if you're doing a fine job, if you're one that challenges students, then I am not talking about you. So, you know, if you're a teacher that is a teacher in name only, and what you're doing is spreading ideology, or your ego is involved in taking some constructive feedback, or you're just lazy, then I'm speaking to you, and I don't care if you get your feelings hurt. Now, I'm bringing this up because I have done some teaching in my time. I was a substitute teacher for some years as my children were growing up. I've invented a methodology by which children will begin to understand the purpose of writing so they're not afraid of making a mistake. In fact, they can view the mistakes as just the thing that they need to get to the good whole. I've been a writer and an editor. I've been a writer my whole life. I've been an editor for many years. I've seen all kinds of stuff. I've heard all kinds of arguments for all kinds of things. And I've been in front of adult audiences, audiences with children, audiences of teachers. And so I'm not speaking out of the top of my head here when I'm going to address this subject. It's the subject of learning. You know, learning is a highly individual thing. I did not learn like other kids in the class. And in fact, how I learned would change from day to day. And the teacher would say, Angela, you understood this yesterday. Why don't you understand it today? I couldn't answer that question. That is how my brain worked. And sometimes, just as an example, so I got this bed that has a flat bottom, and you put a mattress on top of it. And you know, the mattress is going to slide around. So how do you stop the mattress from sliding around? Well, you put these things on called mattress stoppers. I tried to order 3 different styles because I didn't know which was going to work best. One style just never came, and I got credited for that because it didn't arrive. But the other 2, well, one of them took 3 weeks to arrive. So the first one came pretty quick, and they were kind of small. They were about this tall. And I said, well, you know, maybe they'll work, but either way, I need something right now. So they were easy to put on. I understood how the parts fit together. Put two on the outside corners and 2 here at the foot. And it worked okay. I would prefer to have had the higher one. Well, the higher ones, that set about this tall so you can see, came, and I pulled them out of the wrapping, and for the life of me, I could not figure out how these things worked. Couldn't. And so I cussed myself pretty thoroughly because I was sitting there at the foot of the bed. It didn't matter what I did. It wasn't working. It just wasn't working. So I said, okay, fine. So I put them all back in the thing. I taped it shut because I knew I was never going to be opening it again. And I put it up on the shelf. One morning here, about a week and a half ago or so, I went, oh my God, that's how they work. It took that long for my brain to take all the different parts, and it was much more simple than the other ones. Much more simple when I actually understood it. But it took that long. Am I a stupid person? I am not a stupid person. In fact, I am the most brilliant woman in the world. But it doesn't mean I know everything, and it doesn't mean I can learn everything toot sweet. And yet, we've got, here in the United States, the majority of states have very low student outcome percentages. Very low. I am ashamed of the education system and what they've done. Ashamed. And truthfully, it's teachers' unions. It's the ideological courses that they take, and they don't even know it. A lot of them don't even know it because it has built up over a period of time. People go to school to be a teacher, and they get this degree that says, I am a teacher, and yet they don't even know the subjects that they're being taught because they're not being taught subjects to teach. They're being taught how to read from a piece of paper and make sure that these kids can answer these questions so that the scores will look good. And yet the scores keep going down, don't they? I'm horrified at it, just horrified. So then I got to thinking, we know how bad a shape things are in. How do you take a child, especially a child in let's say late middle school to high school, even college, who has been taught with these horrible ways and they don't know anything? How do you get them to not be afraid of learning? Because when they're required to learn or to get better at what it is that their new courses need them to know, there's a lot of pushback from these kids, many kids. They think you're being mean to require them to learn. And so I thought, how do you approach a child who has been indoctrinated their whole life into how not to think, but how to follow rules and regulations around learning, around reading, around doing math, when they have been told the new math and the whole language crap that gets taught, and they still don't know what math is about, and they still don't know, they can't add, they can't subtract, they can't count change out of a drawer at a fast food place where they're working, or a grocery store, anywhere a cash register is needed and somebody hands you cash. They haven't been taught that you take a look at the total, you look at the amount of money, and you start with the last penny. You start counting out the change. If it's $9.69, they give you a 10. You start with 70. That's a penny. Give them a nickel. That's 75. Give them a quarter. That's a dollar. No, they have to type in the 10. Look, and I've been watching this for years. When they go to do the change, they look at it like it's all brand new and they've never seen it. This is the first time ever, even though I know they've been working there for a while. And they don't remember it. They don't even learn how to do it again. And you show it to them and it makes perfect sense. And then they don't remember it because they've been told and told and told that they don't have to learn to remember it because there'll be a machine that will give them the answer. Well, maybe it will, maybe it won't, but how do you count it out? Once I was at a checkout, and the checkout girl, I gave her some money, and she gave me back $40 too much in change. And I said, "Excuse me, but uh, I think you need to check how much change you're supposed to give me." Because she gave me $40 back in change. I was only supposed to get $5, something like that. She said, "I did not give you the wrong change. Maybe you need to count it." Well, the person behind me knew. I mean, it's not like it was all the information was there for everybody to see. And I said, "Okay, but I think you really might want to." No. I said, "Okay, fine. I'll put the $40 in my pocket because you know what? She was just uncooperative, and even the ability to admit that she didn't know. That's ego. That's just out of control ego right there. But why did she have that? I'm not wrong. Because she had probably been told in school for many years everything she did was just awesome, no matter what she did. Well, that's another subject. But a lot of what I found out when I was dealing with students in school is that a lot of them thought learning was boring. Now, why would anybody think learning is boring is beyond me. Now, I may find certain subjects not as interesting, but if there is somebody who's going to tell me some things and show me how this is an interesting subject, I'm willing to listen. I love to learn stuff like this. I mean, good Lord of mercy. As a kid, in my mind, I questioned what this fossil fuel thing was all about because I didn't think there was that many dinosaurs roaming the earth that they should all turn into oil so we could run our cars. I just never thought that. And I looked for years. I just paid attention to who was saying what and all this sort of thing. And now what are they finding? See, I think there's something inside the earth that is producing it. Well, they're just now going, yeah, there's something inside the earth that's producing it. We don't think it's the dinosaurs. Well, I thought about those things. I had my thoughts. I was raised in such a way you didn't ask questions, so I kept a lot of my questions to myself. I didn't ask teachers questions. Every now and then I would, but I just kind of just took it in and did it. But that was a whole nother reason as to why I did that. But I have dealt with students who thought writing was boring. One time, what I did to this for this 8th grade class in a middle school where my daughter was going to, they had been told to write some stories and bring them in, and that they would read them on the day that I was going to be there. The teacher thought she was going to be there, ended up she couldn't be. I don't know why, it doesn't matter. So I said, "Who wants to read their story out loud?" Nobody. Not one person wanted to read their story out loud. Not a one. I said, "Nobody wants to read your story out loud?" Nope. "Do you want to let somebody else read your story out loud?" Oh no, they weren't going to let their friend read it out loud either. I said, you know, the assignment is to read them out loud. So do you want me to read your story out loud? And the answer was, yeah, that would be great. I said, okay. So this boy brought up his, volunteered to be the first one. And he brought his story up and he was standing there. And I said, okay. And I looked at it. I could tell immediately this wasn't going to be easy. He had misspellings, incomplete sentences, all this stuff. It doesn't matter. 8th grade, he should have been able to write better than that, but it doesn't matter. That's what he had. So I said, okay, now I'm going to make I'm going to make a pact with all of you, is that I will read exactly what you wrote. I will not try to change it up. And everybody was copacetic with that, man. They were like, yeah, my story is awesome, and you don't better change nothing in that. It's like, okay, I won't. So the boy said, are you ready? He said, yes, ma'am, I am. All right, let's get started. Second sentence. He said, whoa, whoa, whoa. No, that's not what I wrote. I said, no, I think it is right here. Here it is. And I pointed it out to him, and he went, oh, I didn't mean to write that. I said, well, what did you want there? And so he told me, so I wrote it down, started again. Read the first sentence. It was passable. Second sentence, I read it with that change in it and then proceeded on. No, I didn't write that. By the third time he said I didn't write that, I said, do you want to rewrite this and check it all? He said, yeah. So he went and sat down. Well, I did several like that. And I'll tell you, the whole class after a while was just dying laughing because one girl, she said, I didn't know we were that bad at writing. Our teacher has never told us any of this stuff. She's never pointed out anything like that. And I said, oh, I am so sorry. How sad. And then when I do my punctuation is power thing for students in third grade and fifth grade and fourth grade too, same thing. They get so caught up in the rules of it all that they're scared. There's fear of making a mistake. And so then there's no life in what they write. There's no understanding in it. So I took all that fear away. Within 50 minutes, the fear of writing was gone. Because now they understood what the purpose of punctuation is, and that you don't worry about the punctuation when you're first writing a first draft. But teachers don't understand all of that, you see. And they say, here's your first draft. And if the first draft isn't perfect, because even the teachers aren't understanding what in the hell a first draft is. It's not funny. And then you have the punishment. Children are tested, and the test scores are recorded, and then they have other tests, and there's these tests constantly these tests. The children don't have opportunity to practice a skill. They don't have opportunity to tear that thing apart, whatever it is. If it's a paragraph, if it's a multiplication problem, the style that you would choose to divide something. They don't have opportunity to tear it apart, understanding how the parts work together, because teachers they got to make this happen on this day, test, move on. There's no building of things like there used to be. There's no going back and reviewing of things. Sorry, but the test says, our schedule says we got to do blah, blah, blah. When I was in sixth grade, my teacher, her name was Jane Chapman, Miss Jane Chapman, and of course we called her Miss Chapman. And at the beginning of the year, oh man, that was my best school year ever. At the beginning of the year, she made a chart for each one of us. Each one of us had our own individual chart. And she said, okay, and she would block off, she'd say, during this time, we're going to learn this, and you can go at your own pace and everything like that, so that you can learn it the way you need to learn it. Wonderful school year. Wonderful school year. Nobody else ever did that again. The rest of my schooling. And I was so excited to be able to work at my pace. And it worked beautifully. I mean, that class was so engaged in everything. It was really great. But and she didn't punish if we didn't get it done by a certain time. She said, you are responsible for this period of time. Here's the the things that need to be accomplished, do them at your rate. So if it took you that entire time to get to the end of it and accomplish whatever task, she was fine with that. If it took you 3 days and it was done, she was fine with that too. But there's so much punishment involved. You made a bad grade. Well, you didn't get an opportunity to test out how your brain was going to work with these things, and it's really, really a negative thing. So when a teacher comes in to a classroom and there's hostility, it's hostility, and a lot of teachers take it personally, but it's really not hostility against the teacher per se, such as it's hostility against the system that isn't making sense to the student. And they just can't, no matter what they do, they're going to be punished. They're going to be called stupid, put in special classes, whatever. And it's really, really bad. Now, there's some schools that aren't like this, and we are happy about that. And there's some teachers that aren't like this, and we're happy about that. Yay for all of you. But for those of you teachers who can't be questioned because you don't know your subject, and you take it out on the student, shame on you. Shame on you. Shame, shame, shame. Now, if you don't allow students to question, and what you may call an argument, some student may be kind of loud and boisterous in how they're asking the question. And if you bow up on them, if you're like, how dare you question my authority, it totally changes the conversation. When somebody doesn't understand something you're saying and they ask you a question, no matter how they ask it, you pay attention to them. If you do not understand it, you can say, okay, let me clarify what it is you're wanting to know, so I'll be better able to answer you. Whatever that is. If a student makes a mistake, you walk them through it. Even let them walk themselves through it, about how they arrived at what they arrived at. That's awesome, because that's what we do in the adult world. In the adult world, if we were to go around, if our boss came to us and said, why did you do this, this, and this? Or can you tell me why? And you couldn't tell him why, and he fires you, what benefit has that? It's done nothing. But if he says, okay, well, maybe I didn't explain it correctly, or maybe you haven't been trained properly. Here's the goal, here's what you need to do, and here's why, and in this order. And once you do that, and once they explain it, then you've got a better handle on it. That's what most people need. They need to be walked through it. They need to themselves walk through it. But if there's anger involved in it, if there's frustration, like, oh my God, I can't believe you're bothering me with this stuff. Oh, how stupid can you be? If questioning is not allowed, learning does not occur. So questioning must be allowed. And students need to be able to ask questions. When they get to where you aren't afraid to be questioned, you being the teacher aren't afraid to be questioned, then they will begin to relish learning. They will find joy in it, And maybe you'll find joy in teaching. There's nothing wrong with finding out you don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. I know this. I'm the most brilliant woman in the world. It is certified. I've written about it. But I don't know everything. And if I go around claiming that I do, I'm a liar. And I'm not living in the real world, because in the real world, everybody has limitations. Think of the smartest person in the world, or one of the most brilliant, that's doing a bunch of stuff with space travel and stuff now, Elon Musk. That man, he knows all kinds of stuff that I don't know. His brain works in a way mine does not. He is an extremely brilliant man, but guess what? He doesn't know everything. He still is finding out, and he is willing to question and ask how, why, when, what. And he's the richest man in the world, and brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But he didn't get that way by assuming he knew it all and had nothing left to learn. He didn't. So why do so many people to not be engaged in learning truth, or most current learning on any information of any on any topic? If you're stuck in an ideology that doesn't allow questioning, and that's the Marxist, all around. You're not allowed to question, not allowed to question. Throw you in prison for questioning. They'll kill you for questioning. They'll give you bad grades for questioning. They'll fire you for questioning. Or is it the ego? Is your ego so huge that you can't allow yourself to be questioned? Oh, what a sad way to live. Or are you just lazy? So which is it? Do you really want to know the truth of things and continue to learn, find out that you don't know everything, and be able to correct your own understanding? Because as you learn, your understanding of everything that's connected to it begins to change, and it bubbles up, and next thing you know, you find out things that you didn't know before. And you see how things work in ways you didn't know before. And suddenly things make sense in ways they didn't before. And you have long-standing questions in your brain answered like never before. Why would you not want to have that as your experience? Why would you not want to allow students under your care to have that experience? Are you that mean? Are you that lazy? Are you that ideological? I don't know. That's for you to answer. But these things, learning is never boring. The style in which one is taught can be boring. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know, I was at a Culver's the other day. That's a restaurant that has some really good food. But I was sitting there with my cousin, and we were, she had some kind of a mushroom Swiss burger, and I had the 3 pieces of the whiting, the cod fish dinner. Oh, man, it was delicious. But sitting behind my cousin at a table was a family of 4. And what caught my attention was that they were just chatting like crazy. All of them. They were just chatting like crazy. And it sounded to me like they were having a good time talking about stuff. And the little boy, he looked to be about fourth, fifth grade, maybe. I think that's pretty close, fourth grade. And he says, well, my teacher, she put up on the board, I'm making these numbers up because I don't remember the exact ones. She said, multiply this out, 2,573 times 1,622. He said, I raised my hand. And she said, what? He said, well, I got the answer. She says, no, you don't. No, you don't have the answer. He goes, I do, and here's what it is. And he gave her the answer. She wrote it down, and then he said she took 5 minutes to use her calculator to try to multiply. He said, I don't know why it took her 5 minutes to use her calculator, because it wasn't that hard. The father and the mother were just looking at him. The little girl was looking at him. And he says, but she finally got to the answer, and she goes, oh, you're right. How did you do that? He goes, I don't know. It just happens in my head. The father says, yeah, I know. And the mother says, well, blah, blah, blah. The mother and the father both were able to do that in their heads. The boy got the skill. The little girl, she was much younger, but she was sitting there listening to them like she totally understood what they were talking about. And I thought, oh, now see, that's learning. That's sharing the joy of it. And their brains worked in the same way, so they all understood what they were talking about, and they got it. Now me, don't ask me to multiply, divide, or don't get me to figure out a tip for a bill. Sometimes it comes to me in a flash. I don't care what you throw at me, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. Other times I couldn't do it if I had a calculator. But see, that's how my learning style and how my thought processes work. Both are perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them. God did not create us to be automatons. He taught us, He created us so that we are individuals and we process things differently. Doesn't mean it's wrong. You shouldn't punish somebody because they think differently. Their style of thinking, how they come to a conclusion or an answer. What was that show? Northern Exposure. You remember that show from years back? It was a quirky show with quirky characters. And there was this one fella who lived up in this little town forever, and he had a bar. And he knew how to, he'd been taught something as a child to multiply or add or whatever with his fingers. It was a system. And so he decided he wanted to get a high school diploma because his little wife, who was much younger than him, and she had her high school diploma, and she was very happy, and she was so sad that he didn't have his. He goes, okay, well, I'll go get it. So he signs up for these classes, and this teacher comes through, and she's teaching things, and then finally the time came for the test. And he does the test. It was one of them was this math test to get his GED, and so he's doing da 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 da, and he turns it all in. And she calls him up, and she says, "How did you? These answers are correct, but how did you arrive at them?" He said, "Well, I've got this system on my finger, and I can figure it out. This is a calculator. This was his calculator, connected to his head. Boom." She said, "Well, unfortunately." We don't know that you came to this answer on your own. You have to show your work. He said, what does that mean, show my work? So he had to now go on the paper and write down the individual steps that he had been able to make in 2 seconds with his fingers. Now, I understand the teacher needed to see his work so that she would know he wasn't copying from somebody, or that he'd had an advanced view of the answer sheet or whatever. I understand that. at the same time, to punish somebody and tell them they cannot use that system ever again, the system that works in their mind ever again, is wrong. You've got stuff like that happening all the time. You got kids that are remember when they used to take lefties and force them to write with their right hand? I bet they still do it in some places. The mind is connected. I write with my I write with my right hand, but I can bat lefty and righty. And there's a lot of things I can do with my left hand that I can't do with my right as well. And yet dominantly, for writing purposes, I'm a right-hander. But I know people who were lefties and were forced to become righties, and they said it's just this chore to write because their brain is not working that way, and they're having to go rush around in circles. What the hell is the point of all of that? Allow a student to use their brain and their body. If they're lefty, let them use it. If they're righty, let them use it. If they need to calculate like this, maybe you can figure out what they're doing, and maybe it'll make it easier. Teach them how other people do it. Sure, yeah, that's not a problem. But to not allow them to use the talent that they have and that the methodology of which their brain works, that is not correct. That's not teaching a love of learning. That is punishment. And frankly, can't be doing that. Can't be doing that at all. It's just not right. So hopefully with bringing the education system back to the states and even lower than that into the counties, into the cities, into the boroughs, where you have a population that has a lot of experience that's all the same, so that y'all are on the same page. If they have to change up something in how they do something in a city, a county, a borough, a state, because that's how the majority work here, and yet you're still getting to the same goal of learning, enjoying the learning, being able to carry forth this learning, then what is the problem? Well, the reason the unions exist and the reason the educational department, the federal educational department exists, is to produce automatons who will do as they are told and don't know how to think. That is not how a successful anything can work. And so that's what my thoughts are for the day. And you're free to disagree. But if you do disagree, you got to set forth your arguments for it. Looking forward to hearing from you guys. And remember, if you're a good teacher, I love you. If you are unhappy with what I've been saying, then you need to get your act together. Goodbye.